$5. That is all Isabella Chen has left in the world. The rain falls like needles against the brick alley behind Calabrese's, the upscale Italian restaurant where candlelit booths in the back belong to men who control the city's underworld. November in New Orleans turns the streets into rivers of neon reflection, red and gold and blue dancing across wet pavement. The air smells like wet garbage and expensive cologne, a contradiction that has come to define this city. Isabella stands between Tyler Brennan and two of his associates, her thin jacket soaked through, her shoes letting in water with every shift of weight. Behind her, pressed against the brick wall, is an elderly woman with silver hair and terrified dark eyes. The woman's hand clutches Isabella's jacket sleeve like it is the only solid thing in a crumbling world. Brennan steps closer, a steel pipe hanging loose in his right hand. He is 47 years old, with the kind of face that has grown thick and cruel with years of taking what he wanted without asking. His breath smells like whiskey and cigarettes. The two men beside him are younger, broader, their suits stretched tight over muscle built in prison gyms. "You stupid bitch," Brennan says, his voice low and steady, the voice of a man who has never been told no. "You just signed your death warrant." Isabella's heart pounds so hard she can taste copper in her mouth. Her hands are shaking. Her legs want to run. But her feet stay planted on the wet pavement because the elderly woman behind her is trembling so badly that Isabella can feel it through her own spine. "You want to hurt her," Isabella says, and her voice comes out steadier than she feels. "You go through me first." One of the men laughs. It is a sound without humor, without mercy. From the shadows of the restaurant's back in trance, a man in a black cashmere coat watches every second. Watches the way Isabella's jaw tightens. Watches the way she does not step backward even when the steel pipe comes up. Watches the way her hand finds the elderly woman's wrist and squeezes once, a signal that says, "I am here, you are not alone." This man is Luca Calabrese. He is 6 feet 2 inches tall, with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway and dark eyes that have never learned how to show mercy. His hair is black at the sides, silvered at the temples, slicked back from a face that bears a thin scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone. He is dressed in a suit that costs more than Isabella Chen will earn in a year of double shifts. Around his wrist is a gold watch, and on his ring finger is a band of white gold so pure it seems to glow against his skin. Luca has owned a gun since he was 15 years old. He has given the order to hurt men. He has watched empires crumble beneath his feet and sworn oaths written in blood. In 37 years of living, he has learned one thing above all others: loyalty is currency, and mercy is a luxury only the strong can afford. He has been standing in this shadow for 2 full minutes now, and in those 2 minutes, he has watched a woman with $5 in her pocket stand between his mother and a man with a steel pipe. His jaw tightens. Something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest. Brennan raises the steel pipe. The sound of rain fills the silence between one breath and the next. But what changes everything happens before the pipe falls. The alley explodes with motion. 2 black SUVs screech around the corner, their headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights. Boots on wet pavement. Men in dark suits emerging, 6 of them, moving with the kind of precision that only comes from years of training. Rocco, Luca's lieutenant, steps directly between Brennan and Isabella. He is 5'10" but broad as a bear, with hands that have crushed bone and a face that shows no emotion at all. "The pipe," Rocco says. His voice is like gravel underwater. "Drop it." Brennan's face goes pale. The steel pipe clatters onto the wet ground, bouncing twice before coming to rest against a drain. Luca steps out of the shadow. Every man in the alley goes still. Even the rain seems to pause, holding its breath. He walks toward his mother, toward the elderly woman still gripping Isabella's jacket. His footsteps are measured, unhurried, each one deliberate. He wears his power like other men wear cologne. When he reaches his mother, he takes her hand from Isabella's arm and holds it between both of his own. "Mama," he says, and his voice is different now, softer, a voice that no one in the underworld has ever heard. "Are you hurt?" The elderly woman shakes her head. Her eyes are wide, locked on her son's face as if she cannot quite believe he is real. Luca pulls her away from the brick wall, away from Brennan, and Gino, his second lieutenant, steps forward to gather her into the back of the first SUV. She is still trembling. Her hands are still shaking. Luca turns back to Isabella. He looks at her for a long moment, his dark eyes reading her the way other men read maps. He sees the thin jacket. He sees the shoes with holes in the soles. He sees the way her chest is still heaving, the way her hands are pressed into fists at her sides to keep them from shaking. He sees a woman who stood between a steel pipe and his mother without hesitation. Without calculation. Without expecting anything in return. "What is your name?" he asks. Isabella's mouth is dry. Her voice comes out barely a whisper, trembling like a candle in the wind. "Isabella Chen." Luca nods slowly. He does not look away from her face. Around them, the rain continues to fall. The neon lights continue to reflect off the wet pavement. The city continues its ancient business of indifference to the suffering of invisible people. But something has shifted in this alley. Something has broken open. Something has changed in a way that cannot be unbroken. "You will come with us," Luca says. It is not a request. Isabella opens her mouth to speak, but the words do not come. She watches as Rocco gestures toward the second SUV. She watches as Gino takes Brennan by the arm, his grip so tight that Brennan's face goes white with pain. She watches as the men in suits move around her like water flowing around a stone. And then the alley is empty except for the rain and the fallen steel pipe. Isabella stands alone on the wet pavement, her heart still hammering, her $5 still safe in her jacket pocket. Her life, she does not yet understand, has just changed completely. The woman she protected, the elderly woman with silver hair and terrified eyes, is the mother of the most dangerous man in New Orleans. The man she defied, Tyler Brennan, has just made an enemy of someone who does not forgive. The choice she made in that moment, to stand and not run, has been witnessed by eyes that miss nothing and forget nothing. But Isabella Chen does not know any of this yet. She only knows that her legs are shaking so badly she can barely stand, and that somewhere in the building behind her, someone is still preparing food for customers who will never know how close they came to witnessing a death. She steps out of the alley and onto the wet street. The rain soaks through her jacket. The cold cuts through her like a blade wrapped in ice. She pulls her thin jacket tighter and begins walking back toward the restaurant's front entrance, back toward the kitchen where her shift still has 4 more hours to go. She does not know that she will never work for Tyler Brennan again. She does not know that everything she owns will soon come back to her multiplied 1,000 times over. She does not know that the man in the black cashmere coat is watching from the rear window of the second SUV as she walks, head down, shoulders hunched against the rain. But the camera pulls back, pulling back, until the neon lights become dots and the city becomes a grid of streets and the rain becomes a whisper instead of a roar. And in that distance, in that impossible space between a woman with $5 and a man with an empire, something like fate begins to turn. Now, let us go back. 14 hours earlier. Let us understand how Isabella Chen arrived at this moment, standing in an alley in the rain, her life hanging by a thread. Let us go back to the morning when everything was still broken, before the rain, before the choice, before the man in the black coat emerged from shadow. Let us go back to the beginning. The alarm on Isabella's phone sounds at 4:47 in the morning. It is still dark outside the window of the converted closet she rents in the Harrington family's Garden District mansion. The closet is 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. It used to hold winter coats. Now it holds a single mattress on the floor, a stack of folded clothes, and a photograph in a cracked frame. Isabella sits up, and her head brushes the shelf above the mattress. She is 28 years old, but in the darkness of the closet, she looks decades older. Her dark hair, which was once glossy and thick, hangs limp and tangled. Her eyes, which were once bright with hope, have faded to the color of old pennies. Her hands, which were once soft, are now covered in calluses from 14-hour days scrubbing floors and washing dishes and caring for children who will never truly be hers. She reaches for the photograph in the cracked frame. It is the only thing she saved from the fire 3 weeks ago. Her late husband, James, smiles at her from the photograph. He is wearing the blue shirt he wore on their wedding day. He has been dead for 4 years, but in the darkness of the converted closet, he is the only thing that still feels real. Isabella pulls on the same black uniform she wore yesterday. It smells like kitchen grease and sweat. She pulls her hair back into a tight bun. She finds her wallet on the floor beside the mattress and opens it carefully, as if the money inside might vanish if she is not gentle. $5. One $5 bill and nothing else. She needs to make it last until the Harringtons pay her, which is supposed to happen on Friday. It is currently Tuesday. That means $5 needs to become food and transportation for 4 days. 75 cents per day. Less than a single coffee from any shop in this neighborhood. Less than a portion of bread. Isabella puts the $5 bill back in her wallet and tucks the wallet into the pocket of her uniform. She stands up carefully, her legs stiff from sleeping on the hard floor. In the darkness, she can see the slight outline of the shelf above her head. Sometimes she falls asleep and dreams she is being buried alive. She leaves the converted closet and makes her way downstairs. The Harrington mansion is silent at this hour. The dark wood floors reflect the pale light coming through the tall windows. Paintings of dead ancestors watch her pass. A chandelier the size of a small car hangs from the ceiling, holding bulbs that cost more than Isabella's entire annual salary. The kitchen is warm. Isabella turns on the light and begins preparing breakfast for the Harrington family. Toast. Eggs. Fresh fruit. Coffee. She prepares it all with a kind of precision and care that Margaret Harrington demands, even though Margaret Harrington has stopped paying her for the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 21 days. 504 hours of work without payment. It started with the fire. The apartment building where Isabella lived caught fire one night in October. The fire started in the wall of the apartment directly below hers. No one was hurt, but everything Isabella owned was destroyed. The landlord, Mr. Petrov, sent her a bill for $300,000 in damages and demanded payment in 5 days or she would face eviction and criminal charges. $300,000. The number is so large that it does not even feel real. It is like being told she owes the moon. It is like being asked to drain the ocean with a teaspoon. Isabella tried to explain the situation to Margaret Harrington. She explained that she needed to borrow money against her future wages, that she would pay it back, that she was willing to take extra shifts. Margaret Harrington listened with her eyes narrowed and her mouth pressed into a thin line. Then she did something worse than saying no. She started spreading rumors that Isabella had stolen from the family. A ruby brooch went missing. A diamond necklace disappeared. Margaret Harrington made sure everyone in the Garden District knew that her live-in maid was a thief. None of it was true. Isabella found the brooch in Margaret Harrington's own jewelry box 3 days later, pushed behind the other pieces. But by then, the damage was done. The rumors had spread like a virus. No one would hire her. No family in the neighborhood would trust her with their children or their homes. So Isabella kept working for the Harringtons, without payment, because she had nowhere else to go. And she picked up a second job. The Harrington children come downstairs at 7 o'clock. There are 3 of them, Sophie, age 8, James, age 6, and Caroline, age 4. They are beautiful children with straight blonde hair and pale skin that has never known the sun. They are also cruel in the way that children raised without consequences learn to be cruel. Why is the juice warm? Sophie says, pushing her glass away. I like it cold. You are stupid. Isabella takes the glass without saying anything and returns it to the kitchen. She pours it over ice and brings it back. I am sorry, Sophie. I will do better. You already made a mess of the kitchen, James says, pointing at a single drop of juice on the counter. Mama says you are a thief. Mama says you do not deserve money. Isabella wipes up the drop of juice. She does not argue. There is no point in arguing with children who have been taught that servants are less than human. Margaret Harrington comes downstairs at 7:30. She is 52 years old and dressed all ready for her day, in a designer suit the color of frost. She is thin in the way that comes from denying yourself food as a form of control. Her hair is blonde and perfect. Her nails are manicured and red. She looks at Isabella with the kind of contempt usually reserved for insects. The coffee is cold, Margaret Harrington says, though Isabella prepared it 15 minutes ago. And I do not appreciate the way you looked at me yesterday. I find your expression impertinent. I apologize, Mrs. Harrington, Isabella says. I will brew fresh coffee immediately. See that you do, Margaret Harrington says. She sits down at the table and opens her phone. She is scrolling through something, and her face breaks into a cold smile. Oh, this is interesting. I see that your landlord has filed for civil suit. $300,000, Isabella. That is quite a sum. I wonder what will happen when you cannot pay. Isabella's hands shake as she pours the coffee. She already knows what will happen. Eviction. Homelessness. Criminal charges that she cannot afford to fight. I am working on securing the funds, Isabella says quietly. Of course you are, Margaret Harrington says, and she laughs. It is a sound like breaking glass. Isabella finishes her shift at the Harrington house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She has been working since 4:47 in the morning, which means she has been working for 10 hours and 13 minutes on $5 and no breakfast. She feels dizzy. The kitchen tilts slightly when she stands. She changes out of her uniform and into the clothes she wore yesterday. They are worn and faded, but they are all she has. She catches a bus across town to Calabrese's, the upscale Italian restaurant in the French Quarter where she works weekend shifts under the table for Tyler Brennan. This is the job that is slowly destroying her. Tyler Brennan is the restaurant manager, and he owns her in a way that goes beyond simple employment. He demands sexual favors in exchange for keeping her job and threatens to report her to immigration if she refuses. Immigration. As if she is not even a citizen of the country where she was born, where her husband was buried, where she still owes $300,000 to a landlord who will throw her into the streets. The restaurant smells like garlic and olive oil and money. The tables are set with white linen and fresh flowers. Through the tall windows, Isabella can see the street, where tourists walk past without seeing her, without knowing that behind the kitchen door, a woman is working 16-hour days without overtime pay. She begins her shift at 4 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, she has served 43 plates of food, cleared 37 tables, and been grabbed by 2 separate customers in ways that made her skin crawl. By midnight, she is standing in the kitchen, her feet screaming in her shoes with the holes in the soles, when Tyler Brennan appears beside her. He is holding a steel pipe. He is smiling. Behind him are 2 men in dark suits whose names she does not know and does not want to know. Come with us, he says. I have something I want you to see. Isabella's stomach drops. She has learned to recognize the look in Tyler Brennan's eyes. It is the look of someone about to hurt someone weaker than himself. She has seen it before. It never ends well. I need to finish my shift, she says. No, Tyler Brennan says. You do not. Come. He grabs her arm, and she pulls back. She pulls back hard enough that his grip breaks. She is running before she even realizes she has made the decision to run. She runs toward the back of the restaurant, toward the alley, toward anywhere that is not here, toward any place that is not the trap that is slowly closing around her life. She bursts through the back door into the rain. And that is when she sees the elderly woman pressed against the brick wall. The rain hammers down on Magazine Street like bullets fired from the sky. Isabella Chen runs through the downpour at 6:08 p.m., her waitress uniform already soaked through, a shoe squelching with water and something worse. She is 28 years old but looks 40. Her dark hair, once thick and shining, hangs in wet ropes down her back. Her eyes are the color of chestnuts, but they have lost their shine somewhere between the fire that took her apartment and the eviction notice that arrived this morning. In her jacket pocket, pressed against her racing heart, is a photograph. It is the only thing that survived the flames. It is the only thing worth saving. The Calabrese restaurant emerges from the rain like a ship through fog. The windows glow amber and gold. Inside, the tables are dressed in white linen, each one holding fresh flowers that cost more than the groceries Isabella buys for the entire week. She can see them through the glass as she runs, men in dark tailored suits, women dripping in jewelry that could feed a family for months, candlelight dancing across expensive teeth. She bursts through the kitchen door at 6:10 p.m., 15 minutes late, water streaming from her clothes onto the Spanish tile floor. The head chef, a man named Gerard who has never once looked her in the eye, does not look at her now. He simply points to the uniform hanging on the hook behind the supply closet. Already the dinner rush is building. Already the mistakes are stacking up. Already she is drowning. But first, there is the matter of the $5 in her pocket. She counts it again in the bathroom while changing out of her soaked clothes. $5. One $5 bill. Thin and creased and real. This is all she has. This is everything. After this shift ends at midnight, she will have earned approximately $37, of which Tyler Brennan will claim his cut for providing the opportunity, leaving her with roughly $22 for the next 5 days. She needs to eat. She needs to take the streetcar to the Harrington mansion. She needs to give her landlord a payment on the $300,000 in damages or face criminal charges for arson she did not commit. The fire started from faulty wiring in the walls. She was not even home when it happened. But the landlord does not care about facts. The landlord cares about money. Everyone cares about money. She emerges from the bathroom in her uniform, a black dress with a white apron that is never quite clean. The fabric is thin from 100 washings. There are permanent stains on the hem that no amount of bleach can remove. She ties her hair back with a rubber band she found on the floor yesterday. She touches the photograph inside her jacket one more time. Her husband's face, frozen at age 32, smiling at a camera in a life that no longer exists. She whispers to him like she does every shift, "Just get through this. Just get through tonight." The dinner service unfolds like clockwork. At 6:06 p.m., the first wave of customers arrives. At 7:15 p.m., she has served 43 plates of food, her feet screaming inside her shoes that have holes in the soles, holes big enough to feel the cold floor beneath. At 8:45 p.m., she has cleared 37 tables, smiled at men who grabbed her arm without asking, and been told twice that her service was unacceptable. By 10:48 p.m., she is running on fumes and rage and the faint memory of what it felt like to be someone's wife, someone's person, someone who mattered. She is standing in the kitchen at 11:08 p.m., wiping down the last of the serving trays, when Tyler Brennan appears beside her like smoke. He is 43 years old with the kind of face that has been hardened by cruelty into something that resembles handsomeness. His hair is slicked back with product that smells like copper and sweat. He wears a shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and gold chains circle his throat like snakes. His eyes are the color of infected wounds. He is holding a steel pipe. Behind him stand 2 men in dark suits. They are not restaurant staff. Isabella has worked here for 8 months, and she has never seen them before. "Come with us," Tyler says. His voice is smooth like oil poured over broken glass. "I have something I want you to see." Isabella's stomach drops through the floor into hell itself. She has learned to recognize the look in Tyler Brennan's eyes. It is the look of a man who is about to take something that does not belong to him. It is the look of violence wrapped in a smile. "I need to finish my shift," she says. Her voice comes out thin, barely a whisper, like a candle in the wind. "No," Tyler says. "You do not." He reaches for her arm. His hand closes around her wrist like a trap snapping shut. His fingers dig into the soft skin inside her elbow, and pain shoots through her like lightning. She pulls back. She pulls back hard enough that his grip breaks, hard enough that surprise flickers across his face for just a moment. That moment is all she needs. She is running before she even realizes her legs have made the decision to move. She runs toward the back of the kitchen, past the prep station and the ovens and the walk-in freezer where the meat hangs like dead things. She runs toward the back door, toward the alley, toward anywhere that is not here, toward any place that is not this trap that is slowly closing around her life like a fist. The door explodes open. Cold air hits her like a slap. Rain pelts her face, soaking her in seconds. The alley is narrow and wet and dark, lined with dumpsters that overflow with the garbage of expensive meals. The smell is overwhelming, rotting food, oil, something metallic she does not want to identify. She runs into the rain, her shoes splashing through puddles, her breath coming in ragged gasps. And that is when she sees her. An elderly woman is pressed against the brick wall near the far end of the alley. She is small, maybe 5 feet tall, her white hair plastered to her head by the rain. She is wearing a silk coat that hangs open, exposing a dress that once cost a fortune but now hangs like a rag on her frame. Her face is lined with age and fear, her eyes wide as saucers. Her mouth is open as if she has been trying to scream but the sound never came. Standing in front of her are 2 more men in dark suits. The men are not holding pipes. They are holding something worse. They are holding the weight of consequence. Of power. Of the kind of violence that does not need weapons because violence lives in their breathing. One of the men is reaching toward the woman. His hand is closing on her arm. Isabella stops running. She stops breathing. She stops thinking. She simply stops. And then, without any thought at all, without any calculation of risk or reward or what this might cost her, she steps between the woman and the men. "Step away from her," Isabella says. Her voice is shaking, but it is louder than the rain. It is louder than her fear. It is louder than the voice in her head that is screaming that she has just made the worst decision of her life. The men stare at her. For a moment, there is only the sound of rain on brick, on concrete, on the canvas awnings of the restaurant. For a moment, there is only silence and the smell of wet stone and the understanding that something has shifted in the universe, that a door has opened that can never be closed again. The smaller of the 2 men begins to laugh. It is not a kind sound. It is like the scrape of a blade on bone. "Get out of the way, girl," he says. "This does not concern you." But Isabella does not move. Her legs are shaking. Her hands are shaking. Her entire body is a tuning fork vibrating with terror. But she does not move. She is elderly, Isabella says. The words come from somewhere deep inside her, from some place where she still believes that the world makes sense, that kindness matters, that one person can make a difference. She has done nothing to you. Whatever you want, whatever you think you need to do, you do not need to hurt her. The woman behind her makes a sound. It is barely human. It is the sound of someone whose life is flashing before their eyes and finding it too heavy to hold. The man who is laughing reaches out and shoves Isabella. She flies backward, her feet sliding on the wet concrete, her hand scrambling for purchase on the brick wall. She tastes blood. She tastes rain. She tastes her own terror, metallic and bitter. But before anyone can move, before anything else can happen, a voice cuts through the rain like a blade through silence. "Stop." One word. That is all. One word, deep and solid like an oath, like the rumble of a storm that has been gathering at the horizon for centuries. The word does not come with a shout. It does not come with anger. It comes with the absolute certainty of someone who has never been disobeyed. A man emerges from the shadows at the far end of the alley. He is tall, 6'2", with shoulders that seem to fill the entire width of the narrow passage. He is wearing a cashmere coat that costs more than everything Isabella has ever owned combined. His hair is dark, silver at the temples, and it is wet from the rain. His face is carved from marble, all sharp angles and perfect precision. A scar runs from the corner of his left eye to his jawline, a thin pale line that speaks of violence survived and lessons learned. But it is his eyes that stop everything. They are the color of storm clouds, and they are looking directly at the 2 men in dark suits. "Step away from her," he says. The same words Isabella just spoke. Except when he says them, they are not a desperate plea. They are a command. The men move as if they have been struck by lightning. They step backward, their hands raised, their faces draining of color so quickly it is like watching someone die. You did not see her, the man says. He is not talking to the elderly woman. He is not talking to Isabella. He is talking to the two men. You came down this alley. You found nothing. You learned nothing. You go back to whoever sent you, and you tell them that Mrs. Calabrese is under my protection. Do you understand me? The men nod so fast their heads might fall off. Go, he says. They run. They run back toward the restaurant, their shoes splashing in the puddles, their dark suits disappearing into the rain. The man turns to look at Isabella. She is standing there soaking wet, bleeding from her lip, trembling like a wounded animal. She is staring at him with her mouth slightly open, trying to comprehend what just happened, trying to understand why the universe has suddenly shifted beneath her feet. Thank you, the elderly woman says. Her voice is frail, like paper, like the last breath of a dying thing. But there is something else in her voice too. Something that sounds like relief. Something that sounds like the recognition of a miracle. The man glances at her. For just a moment, something in his expression softens. It is gone in an instant, replaced by the cold calculation that lives behind those storm cloud eyes. But Isabella sees it. She sees the love there, fierce and protective and absolute. Are you hurt? He asks the elderly woman. No, she says. No, thank you to God. No. He turns back to Isabella. The look on his face is unreadable. He is studying her the way a general might study a battlefield, cataloging information, understanding the significance of what has just happened. Why did you do that? He asks. Isabella's teeth are chattering. She does not know if it is from the cold or the fear or something else entirely. She does not know how to answer. She does not know this man. She does not know who he is or why his name made those men run or what kind of power lives in the space between his words. All she knows is that an old woman was about to be hurt, and she could not stand by and let it happen. Because, Isabella says, she is someone. The man is quiet for a very long moment. The rain continues to fall around them, soaking them, drowning them, the entire city reduced to water and darkness and the space between two people who have just changed each other's lives forever without knowing it. His name is Luca Calabrese. He is the most powerful man in New Orleans. And standing in that alley in the rain, watching a soaking wet waitress with a bleeding lip stand between him and danger, he realizes something that will alter the course of both their destinies. He realizes that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing the right thing even when you are terrified. And this young woman, this nobody with $5 in her pocket and a dead husband's photograph in her jacket, just taught him that lesson in the rain. The rain hammered against the kitchen window of Calabrese's like 1,000 impatient fists. Isabella Chen pushed through the back door, her clothes soaked through, her hair plastered to her face in dark strands. She was 15 minutes late. The clock on the wall read 10:13 p.m. 15 minutes late meant consequences. Tyler Brennan stood waiting in the narrow hallway between the kitchen and the main dining room, his silhouette backlit by the warm glow spilling from the restaurant beyond. He was 43 years old, with slicked back hair the color of wet concrete and cologne so thick it made the air taste chemical. His suit was expensive but worn, the kind of expensive that came from quick money, dangerous money. His fingers flexed as she approached, and Isabella felt her stomach tighten like a fist. "You're late again, Isabella," he said. His voice was smooth like oil, like something that would leave a stain. She opened her mouth to apologize, but he moved faster. His hand shot out and wrapped around her wrist, his thumb pressing directly into her pulse point. She could feel her own heartbeat accelerating against the pressure of his grip, racing like a trapped bird. "I'm sorry, Tyler." The bus was delayed and "Sorry doesn't cover your shifts, sweetheart." His other hand moved to her waist, fingers spreading across the damp fabric of her uniform. "You know what does cover it." Isabella froze. Her throat closed. The nausea rose from somewhere deep in her chest, bitter and choking. He leaned closer. She could smell the whiskey on his breath, underneath the cologne, underneath everything. You want to keep this job, you meet me in the office after close. And if you even think about reporting anything to anyone, I've got a friend at immigration who would absolutely love to hear about your visa situation. Your status. All those details. His smile widened. Doesn't matter that your daughter has a birth certificate, does it? Doesn't matter that she's American. I can still make your life very, very complicated. Isabella's daughter. 4 years old. In bed at the group home where Isabella paid Mrs. Chen, no relation, just a woman with the same last name, $60 a week to keep her safe while Isabella worked. She nodded because she had no choice. She had $5 in her pocket. $300,000 owed in 5 days. The landlord's deadline was etched into her skin like a scar, like something that would never fade. Tyler released her wrist with a laugh and a pat on her cheek. That's my girl. Get to work. The main dining room of Calabrese's was exactly what an upscale Italian restaurant in the Garden District should be. White tablecloths caught the glow of candlelight. Couples leaned across tables with their hands nearly touching, sharing bites of tiramisu, sipping wine from glasses the size of fists. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. A chandelier dripped light like honey. Everything whispered money, safety, the kind of life that existed on the other side of an invisible wall from people like Isabella. She carried her tray with practiced steadiness. Plates balanced along her left forearm. Water glasses filled with ice that caught the candlelight and scattered it like diamonds. Smile. Always smile. The smile costs nothing, but it buys you tips, and tips buy you groceries, and groceries mean your daughter eats more than rice and beans twice a day. What Isabella could not see from the main dining room was the back section, beyond the kitchen, through a doorway marked private. The private booth had red leather that cost more than Isabella's entire wardrobe. The table was small and intimate, set for men who conducted business in whispers. Men in dark suits with shoulders like buildings. Men with scars and rings made of gold and silver. Men who controlled the city the way other men controlled chess pieces, with calculation, with ruthlessness, with the absolute certainty that they would never lose. At 10:45 p.m., Isabella took the trash to the alley. The rain had not stopped. It fell in sheets now, the wind pushing it sideways, turning it into something sharp and searching. The neon from the street cast the alley in shades of red and blue, colors that did not exist in nature, colors that belonged only to cities and their underbelly. The smell of wet garbage rose from the bins. The smell of rain on old brick. The smell of the world after dark. That is when she heard the cry. It was not loud, but it cut through the rain like a blade. A woman's voice, terrified, desperate. Coming from deeper in the alley, past the dumpsters, where the light did not quite reach. Isabella set down her trash bag. She should have gone back inside. She should have locked the door behind her and pretended she heard nothing. She should have remembered that she was nobody, that her daughter needed her alive and employed, that her $5 would become $0 if she lost this job. Instead, she walked toward the sound. The woman was pinned against the brick wall, her silver hair plastered to her face, her elegant grey coat darkened with rain. She was old, perhaps 70, with the kind of bones that had once been beautiful and the kind of eyes that carried the weight of a full life. She was terrified. There were 3 men surrounding her, and they moved like wolves circling something wounded and separate from the herd. Tyler Brennan stood closest to her. His associates flanked him, one holding a crowbar that reflected the neon light, the other cracking his knuckles with the sound of small bones breaking. Your son thinks he can just take territory that belongs to other people, Mrs. Calabrese. Tyler's voice was different here in the dark. It was hungry. Your son thinks he can just expand his operations into neighborhoods that have arrangements. The woman did not answer. She was trying to make herself smaller, trying to disappear into the brick itself. Isabella stepped forward. The rain soaked through her uniform, turned her shoes into something cold and heavy. She set the trash bag down deliberately. Slowly. like she had all the time in the world. "You want to hurt her, you go through me first," Isabella said. Tyler turned. His face went through several expressions in sequence. Confusion. Then anger. Then something worse than anger, contempt. "Isabella, what the hell are you doing? This doesn't concern you. I said you go through me first." Isabella's voice did not shake. She did not know where the steadiness came from. It felt like it belonged to someone else, like she was borrowing it from the future, from a version of herself that did not exist yet. Tyler raised the crowbar. The metal caught the light. It was going to come down toward her or toward the woman, and Isabella understood in that moment that she was going to take the blow rather than let it land on someone else. She understood that some choices are made in seconds and they change you forever. The crowbar never fell. A man stepped out of the shadows, and the entire alley contracted around him like a fist closing. He was 6'3", with shoulders that seemed to absorb the neon light rather than reflect it. His coat was black and expensive, cashmere or something close, tailored to move with his body like a second skin. His face was sharp, all angles and severity. His eyes were the color of a winter storm, gray and cold and absolutely certain. There was a scar running through his left eyebrow, a thin line of old violence that only made him more dangerous because it proved he had lived through things that killed other men. His name was Luca Calabrese. Tyler Brennan went white. Not pale. White. The color of something that had been drained of blood and will and hope. "Mr. Calabrese, I?" "Rocco," Luca said quietly. The lieutenant appeared from nowhere, condensing out of the darkness like he had been there all along, which perhaps he had been. He was joined by 4 men in black suits, each one moving with the same precise efficiency, each one positioning himself at the alley's exit with the certainty of men who had done this exact thing many times before. Another man, older, with gray at his temples and the posture of someone who had fought and survived, approached the terrified woman. He removed his own coat and draped it carefully across her shoulders. His name was Gino. His movements were gentler than anything the alley had seen in years. Luca's eyes moved across the scene and then settled on Isabella with an intensity that made her breath stop. "You," he said. "What is your name?" "Isabella Chen." Her voice sounded very small in the rain. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what was happening, I just heard." "You just protected my mother," Luca said. "Not a question. A statement of fact. Tell me why." Tyler was on his knees now, rain mixing with something else, something wet and desperate coming from his eyes. "Mr. Calabrese, I swear I didn't know that was your mother, I was just—" Luca did not even look at him. "Rocco. Take him somewhere. I want him to understand the full scope of what he has done. Legally. Thoroughly. I want him to spend years understanding it." Then Luca extended his hand to Isabella. "Come inside. You're soaked." It was not a request. The back booth of Calabrese's was a different world from the candlelit tables where couples held hands. The leather was deep red, the lighting low and intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance. The air tasted of expensive wine and cigars that cost more per stick than Isabella made in an hour. Maria Calabrese sat wrapped in Gino's coat, sipping tea with shaking hands. Her son sat across from Isabella, studying her like she was a problem that required solving. "Why did you do that?" he asked again. "You knew nothing about what was happening. You could have been killed." "Because she needed help." Isabella's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip them together. "She's someone's mother." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and took Isabella's hand, and her touch was warm, alive, real in a way that made Isabella suddenly aware of how cold everything else was. "Child, you are shaking," Maria said. "When did you last eat?" Isabella could not answer. Her throat was tight. Luca's voice came from across the table, and it was different now, softer around the edges but no less commanding. "Rocco. Bring food. Everything we have. And coffee. Hot coffee." To Isabella, Tell me why you are working for a man like Tyler Brennan. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to stand up and walk out and pretend this had not happened. But something in her had broken open in that alley. Some wall she had been holding up for 3 months had collapsed, and now she could not stop the words. I had an apartment. 3 weeks ago there was a fire. Everything burned. Everything except one photo of my late husband. A photo. She pulled it from her pocket, warped from the water but still intact. A young man in a military uniform, smiling. My landlord says I owe $300,000 in damages. He has a deadline. 5 days. After that he presses criminal charges. After that I cannot afford a lawyer. I lose my daughter. I lose everything. $300,000, Luca repeated, tasting the number. I have $5. Her voice broke. I have $5 and a photo and 5 days. The food arrived. Pasta still steaming. Bread that smelled like heaven. Fresh fruit. Olive oil so expensive it probably had a name. Maria urged her to eat, and Isabella did, because her body was stronger than her pride, and the taste of real food made her cry in a way that 3 weeks of terror had not. When she finished, Luca leaned forward. His eyes held hers with an intensity that felt like drowning. The debt is handled, he said. $300,000. Paid. Consider it resolved. Isabella stared at him. I can't accept that. I can't. You already did. You stood between armed men and my mother. This is not charity, Isabella. This is a debt I owe. Maria squeezed her hand. My son does not offer help lightly, child. Please. Let him. Above the restaurant, in the apartment where Luca lived alone except for the nanny who kept his apartment clean and his kitchen stocked, his 7-year-old daughter Lily stood at her window. She was small, with dark curls and her mother's eyes that had closed for the last time 2 years ago, leaving Luca with a child who sometimes woke up screaming for someone who would never come back. Gino, she said to the man who had come upstairs briefly to check on her. Who is the pretty lady downstairs? Gino smiled gently. Someone important, Piccolo. Someone very important. Is she going to stay? I do not know, Gino said. But as he looked at the sleeping child and thought about the woman downstairs, about the way his boss had looked at her, he revised his answer silently. Yes. She would stay. Not tonight. But eventually. She would stay. Luca walked Isabella to the car at the back entrance. The rain still fell, but it felt different now, like something was washing rather than drowning. Tomorrow, Luca said. Come to the restaurant at noon. There is someone who wants to meet you. She did not understand, but she nodded. As the car pulled away into the wet darkness, Rocco appeared beside his boss, stepping out of the rain like he had been waiting all along. What do you want us to do about Brennan, boss? Luca's jaw tightened. His eyes were still fixed on the taillights disappearing into the night. Make him disappear from her life, Luca said. Permanently. But no blood. I want him to understand exactly what he has done. I want him to spend decades understanding it. Legally. Systematically. Thoroughly. And the other one? The woman who withheld the paychecks. Luca turned to face his lieutenant. Margaret Harrington. Yes, boss. Federal investigators, Luca said quietly. She has been stealing from her employers for years. Embezzlement. Tax evasion. I have someone who will provide the documentation. By the end of the week, she will understand what it means to prey on people with nothing. Rocco nodded and disappeared back into the rain, already making the calls, already setting in motion the machinery of justice that operates in the shadows of cities, unseen by people who believe the world runs on laws and courts and honorable men. But what Luca did not tell anyone was that as he rode the elevator back up to his apartment, he was thinking about the way Isabella had stood in that alley with rain streaming down her face and terror in her eyes, but also something else, something that looked like courage. Something that looked like someone who had learned to fight by living, by surviving, by refusing to let the people she loved be destroyed without resistance. He opened the door to Lily's room and looked at his daughter sleeping with her dark curls spread across the pillow, and he thought about Isabella Chen, and he understood that some debts are not paid in money. Some debts are paid in the slow alchemy of trust, in the gradual revelation of who a person really is, in the transformation that happens when two broken people find each other in the darkness and decide, without speaking it aloud, that they will not let the darkness win. He did not know it yet, but his entire life was about to change. Isabella Chen wakes in the darkness of the converted closet, her eyes snapping open to silence. For 3 seconds, she doesn't know where she is. Then the reality settles like a stone into her chest. The closet. The Harrington mansion. A life that is barely a life at all. She reaches for her phone. 5:47 in the morning. Outside, the November rain hammers against the small window above her cot like it's trying to break through. She runs her fingers across her late husband's photograph, protected in its plastic sleeve. His face smiles back at her, so alive, so impossibly distant. $5 in her pocket. That is all that remains of her entire world. The footsteps above her head signal Margaret's morning routine. Isabella pulls her uniform from the hook and dresses in the grey fabric that has become a second skin. The house is still dark as she moves through the kitchen to start the coffee that Mrs. Harrington will barely acknowledge, the eggs that will be criticized for their temperature, the toast that will somehow be wrong. The rain intensifies outside. Isabella watches it streak the windows, watches the world blur into chaos beyond the glass. She is so focused on the rhythm of the rain that she almost doesn't hear the voice cutting through the silence like a blade wrapped in ice. Isabella! Get down here! Now! Margaret Harrington descends the staircase in her silk robe, her face already twisted into something sharp and dangerous. Isabella's hands tighten around the dishcloth she is holding. She has learned to read the nuances of Margaret's anger, the micro-adjustments that signal whether she is merely irritable or truly vicious. This is vicious. Mrs. Harrington, good morning, Isabella begins. Margaret's laugh is not warm. It is the sound of something breaking. Good morning? Good morning? I received a call at 6 in the morning, Isabella. 6. From a concerned friend who informed me that you have been seen meeting with criminals. That you are spreading vicious lies about this family. That you have been consorting with organized crime elements and dragging our name through the mud. Isabella's mouth goes dry. She thinks of Luca in the shadows of that alley, of the way he moved like someone used to owning every room he entered. Mrs. Harrington, I don't know what you mean. Don't lie to me. Margaret's voice drops, which is somehow more terrifying than if she had screamed. I have always been gracious to you, Isabella. I gave you employment when you had nothing. I gave you a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me? By bringing criminals to my door? By spreading rumors that I have somehow mistreated you? I haven't told anyone. Pack your things. Margaret turns toward the kitchen window, dismissing her like she is something stuck on the bottom of a shoe. You are fired. Effective immediately. And before you leave, we need to settle accounts. The uniform you damaged last month. The vase you broke in the hallway. $2,000, Isabella. You owe me $2,000, or I am calling the police and reporting you for theft. Pack your things and we will discuss how you plan to repay me. The room tilts. Isabella grips the counter to steady herself. Mrs. Harrington, I don't have $2,000. I don't have $200. Please, if you would just listen. Get out. Margaret doesn't even turn to face her. You have 20 minutes to collect your things and leave my house. And if I ever see you again, if you ever speak my name again, I will destroy what little is left of your life. Do you understand me? The words hang in the air like poison gas. Isabella stands there for a moment longer, waiting for something to shift, for Margaret to show mercy or reconsider. But the woman simply picks up her coffee cup with a steady hand and takes a sip, her face a mask of absolute indifference. Isabella moves like someone underwater. Each step toward the closet takes a century. She pulls down her canvas bag from the shelf. It is the same bag she arrived with 3 years ago, nearly empty then and nearly empty now because there is nothing to accumulate when you live on the edge of nothing. She folds her 2 extra uniforms. She rolls up her sleeping bag. She places her late husband's photograph at the bottom, wrapped in a scarf that belonged to her mother. The house is silent except for the sound of rain outside and the rush of blood in her ears. She walks down the back stairs, avoiding the main hallway where Margaret might be waiting. The kitchen door opens onto the garden path that leads to the street. The rain is so thick she can barely see 5 feet in front of her. Isabella steps out into November, and the cold hits her like a physical blow. She walks for blocks without destination, without thought, the rain soaking through her thin jacket and down to skin. Her hands are shaking so badly she can barely hold her bag. The mathematical reality crashes down on her like a hammer. $300,000 owed to the landlord. $2,000 Margaret demands. No job. No income. No home. The river is 6 blocks away. She knows this because she has walked past it 100 times, has felt it pulling at her on the worst days, and now the worst day has finally arrived. The streetcar stop appears through the rain like a grey ghost. She sits on the bench, soaked through completely, watching the water stream down the metal shelter. A couple walks past with an umbrella. A man in a business suit hurries toward the station. No one looks at her. She is invisible. She has always been invisible. She pulls out her husband's photo from the inside of her bag, hands trembling. The plastic is wet but his face is protected, his smile still there, still impossible. She thinks about the Mississippi River churning a mile away. She thinks about how easy it would be to walk there, how easy it would be to let the water take everything away. How easy it would be to stop fighting. Her phone buzzes. The screen illuminates with an unknown number. The message is simple, Isabella. Noon. Please come. Someone is waiting. Luca. She stares at those words for a long moment. The word please. She has not heard that word in weeks, months maybe. Not directed at her. Never directed at her as if her answer actually matters. She steps back from the edge of that invisible cliff and sits back down on the bench to wait. Across the city, at exactly 7 in the morning, Rocco stands in the hallway of a 3-story apartment building in the Marigny neighborhood. The rain drips from his overcoat. Behind him, 5 men in black suits stand with the stillness of statues. He nods once at the door marked 312. The lock does not hold. Tyler Brennan jolts awake to the sound of his apartment door being forced open. He scrambles out of bed in his boxer shorts, reaching for something, anything, but Rocco is already moving toward him like smoke. The men in black suits spread through the apartment with practiced efficiency, moving from room to room, checking corners, securing windows. Tyler Brennan. Rocco's voice is ice water poured down a spine. Brennan's face goes white. Who? What is this? FBI. A woman in a dark suit steps forward, badge extended. Behind her are 2 more agents in federal jackets. We have a warrant to search this property and take you into custody on charges of sexual harassment, wage theft, extortion, immigration fraud, and embezzlement from Calabrese's restaurant. What? No, you can't, I don't. Brennan's hands are shaking. He backs toward the bed, and Rocco moves with him, never breaking eye contact. This is a mistake. I haven't done anything. The lead agent pulls out a folder, thick with documents. 6 women. All with documented complaints. All with evidence. Text messages. Recorded conversations. Video footage from security cameras. One woman just provided us with the offshore account information where you've been depositing stolen wages. She moves closer. You threatened the wrong person, Mr. Brennan. He collapses to his knees, and what emerges from his mouth is not words but pure animal sound. Pleading. Begging. Trembling like a thing cornered with no way out. They haul him up, cuff him, walk him out past his neighbors who stand in their doorways in various states of undress and shock. Morning news cameras are already waiting at the building entrance, their presence no accident. By 7:30, the black SUVs pull up to the Garden District mansion where Margaret Harrington is in her breakfast room, a cup of Earl Grey steaming beside her as she scrolls through her phone. She hears the vehicle's engines, the sound of car doors opening in rapid succession. When the knock comes at her door, she assumes it is some delivery service. She is wrong. The FBI agents move through her home with the same steady purpose Rocco's men brought to Tyler Brennan's apartment. 12 of them, their badges catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. Margaret's coffee cup shatters against the floor. Margaret Harrington, you are under arrest for federal tax evasion, wire fraud, embezzlement from 3 charitable foundations, and money laundering, the lead agent says. The words are a death sentence delivered in a neutral tone. You have the right to remain silent. Margaret's shock transforms into rage, transforms into something that looks almost like understanding. Her lawyers will arrive. Her lawyers will do what lawyers do. But the documentation is airtight. The offshore accounts frozen. The fraudulent wire transfers documented and time-stamped. The stolen charitable donations traced back to her signature, her accounts, her decisions made with calculated precision over 15 years. 40 years federal prison. They walk her out past her neighbors in her silk robe, handcuffs on her wrists, her face a mask of fury that cannot touch the investigation she has triggered. By 11 o'clock, both arrests are on every news channel in New Orleans. By noon, the story is spreading across state lines like wildfire. Tax evasion. Embezzlement. Sexual harassment. Immigration fraud. Organized crime connections. Luca watches the news from his office on the 40th floor, Rocco standing beside him, silent and immovable. On the screen, Tyler Brennan is being led into federal court. On another screen, Margaret Harrington is doing the same. 2 lives dismantled not by violence but by justice executed with surgical precision. 2 people who preyed on the vulnerable, exposed in the full light of a very public reckoning. Both situations handled. Luca asks. Yes, boss, Rocco replies. Completely. Luca nods and turns away from the screens. He thinks of Isabella Chen, soaked through with rain, sitting on a streetcar bench believing she has lost everything. He thinks of the moment he was waiting for her to arrive. He does not yet know that her life is about to change in ways that neither of them could predict. But she is coming. She is finally coming. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Luca Calabrese's private apartment above the restaurant, warm and golden, painting the space in shades of honey and amber. Isabella stood in the doorway, borrowed clothes still damp at the edges, her hair pulled back with a trembling hand, eyes red and swollen from crying but present, here, stepping across a threshold she never believed she would cross. The apartment was nothing like she imagined a mafia boss would live. No black leather, no cold marble. Instead, cream-colored furniture, soft rugs, children's drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets shaped like fruit, a wooden box overflowing with toys in the corner by the window. And there, on the couch, was Lily. 7 years old, with dark curls that fell exactly like her father's, wide brown eyes that held the kind of gentleness that only children and saints possess, clutching a stuffed rabbit so worn its cotton was visible through patches in the fabric. She looked up when Isabella entered, studying her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle made of heartbreak. Luca's voice shifted. Not the voice that commanded men in black suits, but something softer, something that belonged only to this child. Lily, this is Isabella. The woman I told you about. The one who was brave when she did not have to be. Lily slid down from the couch without rushing, her small feet silent on the hardwood floor. She walked slowly toward Isabella, her head tilted slightly, her eyes searching. She looked up, and when she spoke, her voice was barely louder than a whisper. Papa said you saved Nonna. That you stepped between her and bad men even though you were scared. Isabella knelt down until she was eye level with the child, her knees cracking slightly from the movement. "Your grandmother is a very special lady. She has a brave heart." Lily reached out one small hand and touched Isabella's wrist, her fingers cool and soft. "Are you sad? Your eyes are red like when I cry." The question was so simple, so direct, that Isabella felt something inside her chest crack open like an egg. She could not lie to this child. The words came out broken. "Yes, sweetheart. I am a little sad right now." Lily did not hesitate. She stepped forward and wrapped her small arms around Isabella's neck, pressing her face against the borrowed fabric of the shirt Isabella wore. Her voice was muffled but certain. "Papa says when I am sad he holds me until it is better. Can I hold you until you feel better?" Isabella pulled the child close, and her tears came then, hot and unstoppable, soaking into Lily's dark curls. She held a child who was not hers, who barely knew her, who was offering comfort that the universe had not given her in 5 years. Over the top of Lily's head, she saw Luca watching them both, his powerful frame leaning against the doorway, his face unguarded for the first time, the careful mask he wore for his empire completely gone. His eyes glistened. He did not look away. They spent the afternoon in that apartment the way families spend afternoons, though Isabella knew she was not yet family, not officially, not in any way that papers could record. Lily showed her drawings she had made, pictures of houses and flowers and a woman with long black hair that made Isabella's throat tight. Lily showed her books with worn spines, stories about magic and adventure and children who found homes in unexpected places. Isabella read to her, the words steady and warm, the same voice she had used for the Harrington children, except this time the child listened like she mattered, like every word was a gift being placed directly into her heart. At 3 o'clock, as the afternoon light began to turn copper, Lily climbed into Isabella's lap and wrapped her arms around Isabella's neck. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. The question was small, but it carried weight. It was a question about promises. It was a question about whether this moment was real or if it would evaporate like every other good thing Isabella had ever held. Isabella looked toward Luca, her eyes asking permission or guidance or some kind of signal that would tell her what came next. He nodded once, slowly. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like hope. "If you want to. There is a job here, Isabella. Not as a nanny." He paused. The rain outside picked up against the windows, a soft patter that filled the silence. "As family." Lily sat up suddenly in Isabella's lap, her small body going rigid with realization. "As my mama." The question hung in the air like a held breath, like the moment before something sacred is spoken aloud and cannot be taken back. The room went silent. Luca's face showed a flash of shock, then tenderness, then something that looked like grief for a woman who had died, for the absence of the love that Lily carried in her small chest with nowhere to put it. But underneath the grief was something else, something that looked almost like realization, like watching two pieces of a puzzle find each other in the dark. Lily continued, her voice innocent and certain, the way children are certain about the truest things. "I asked Nonna if you could be my mama, and she said that some mamas are born and some are chosen, and I choose you. I choose you, Isabella." Isabella could not speak. Her body made the choice before her mind could catch up. She pulled the child closer, her arms wrapping around the small frame, her face buried in the dark curls that smelled like strawberry shampoo and hope. When she finally found her voice, it came out broken and real. "I would be so honored, sweetheart. So very honored." Luca and Isabella's eyes met over Lily's head. The understanding that passed between them was wordless and complete. This child had already decided. Neither of them had the heart or the desire to argue against a 7-year-old's absolute certainty about what she needed. That evening, when Maria Calabrese arrived for dinner, she took Isabella's hand the moment she saw her, her grip warm and strong. "You saved my life, child. And now you are saving my son's." Maria's eyes held memories, decades of them, the weight of a woman who had lived through hardship and emerged with her capacity for love intact. He has been alone in the dark since his brother's betrayal, since Lily's mother passed. "You brought light back into this place. I have waited years to see my son smile like a human instead of like a general surveying a battlefield. The backstory emerged in pieces throughout dinner. Luca's brother, Marco, had sold the family's operations to enemies 5 years ago, had betrayed every oath, every bond of blood and loyalty. Luca had been forced to choose between mercy and survival. He chose survival. The cost was his brother's life, a debt paid in blood, a wound that never fully healed. Since then, trust had become a luxury he could not afford. But watching Isabella with Lily, the way she braided the child's hair after dinner, the way she laughed when Lily told her a silly joke about a chicken that wore glasses, something in Luca softened like winter turning to spring. By 9 o'clock, Lily fell asleep on Isabella's lap while Isabella stroked her hair, her fingers gentle against the dark curls. Luca watched them both from across the room, his expression unguarded, his men standing in the doorway exchanging glances that said what they could not speak aloud. Their boss was smiling. Actually smiling. For the first time in years. 3 months later, the kitchen of Luca's apartment smelled like vanilla and butter and the particular sweetness of children baking. Isabella and Lily stood on a stepstool, flour dusting their noses, their hands covered in cookie dough, laughing at something Lily had said about dinosaurs wearing aprons. Isabella had become a different woman in those 3 months. The fear that lived in her eyes had been replaced by something steadier. She wore clothes that fit properly, slept in a real bedroom with windows that looked out over the city, woke without the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears. The $300,000 in damages, the debt that had been a death sentence, had been paid in full by Luca. No negotiation, no condition, no expectation. Pure gratitude expressed in numbers large enough to erase a life's worth of suffering. Lily called her mama now without hesitation, without asking permission, the word natural and easy in her small mouth. When Luca came home from business that evening, Lily ran to him, flour still in her hair, her face bright. "Papa, look what Mama and I made." She held up a tray of cookies shaped like stars. He kissed his daughter's head, met Isabella's eyes across the kitchen, and in that moment the connection between them deepened, built on trust and on the choice to be family not because blood demanded it but because hearts did. News reports had played out their own justice. Tyler Brennan, the manager who had demanded a body for minimum wage, the man who had threatened and exploited, received 15 years federal prison. His first parole hearing was denied. Margaret Harrington, the woman whose cruelty had masqueraded as elegance, whose stolen charity donations were traced and documented, received 40 years. Her assets were seized, her children placed with their father who had no idea what his ex-wife had become, her name dragged through every news outlet until it became synonymous with corruption. Isabella stood in front of her old apartment building 3 months after the fire. It had been repaired, the damage corrected, the ashes cleaned away. The landlord apologized to her, his face flushed with shame because Luca's lawyers had proven the fire was electrical, not her fault, not anything she had caused. The criminal charges were dropped. She pulled out the photograph of her late husband from her pocket, the picture that had survived the fire, and she held it up to the afternoon light. "I hope you would approve," she whispered to the image. "I think you would love them. I think you sent them to me." That evening, the private back booth at Calabrese's was filled with the sound of family. Lily chattering about her school day, about a boy named Marcus who shared his crayons, about a spelling test she had passed. Maria beaming with the kind of pride only a grandmother can possess. Rocco and Gino relaxed in a way they never did on business, their shoulders loose, their laughter genuine. Luca took Isabella's hand under the table, his strong fingers threading through hers, and squeezed gently. She squeezed back. Isabella's voice came through the evening like a whisper only the audience could hear. "I thought I had lost everything in that fire. My home, my security, my hope. I thought I was alone, that the universe had decided I was worth nothing. But sometimes the universe burns away what we think we need to show us what we actually need. I needed family. I needed to be seen. I needed to remember that real strength is not found in never falling but in always standing back up. And sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is exactly the protection a broken heart needs to heal." Luca's voice came next, deep and solid like an oath. "I thought loyalty was written in blood. I thought mercy was weakness, that trust was a luxury I could not afford. But she showed me that courage is not about power. It is about standing between the vulnerable and the violent even when you have nothing. She had $5 in her pocket and she spent it on someone else's safety. That is the rarest thing in my world. That is worth everything. The final image held Lily asleep on Isabella's shoulder, Luca's arm around them both, Maria smiling, the restaurant glowing warm against the November rain still falling outside but unable to touch them here, unable to reach the light they had created together. Real strength is not found in never falling but in always standing back up. If this story moved your heart, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone fighting their own battle. Drop a comment and tell us what strength means to you. Tomorrow we have another story of courage waiting for you. We will see you then.